Were there just not as many gay people back then, or were they just closeted? It's truly amazing how more people will admit to being gay when they aren't persecuted, imprisoned, or executed for it. Many are still closeted. I don't come out because I'm afraid I'll be judged. Closeted indeed. Back then, being gay meant you were defective, insane, or even a criminal. Closeted or just not knowing what to do with that actual feeling where you think everyone feels the same and suppresses it. My mom's best friend is gay, and when he came out in the 70s, she was the only person he keeps in contact from his old life. Family, friends, coworkers, etc. all completely cut him off. They were closeted. There's been a lot of persecution for being homosexual, some even continues today. Closeted, it's like how about one if the population was left-handed until the stigma had died out mostly, and now we can see that actually it's about 10. Gay people existed in the same amounts, but they suppressed it as much as possible. Many lived their lives as straight people. This still happens everywhere. Nature has always made just as many gay folks. Fewer folks in the past understood what those feelings meant, were willing to act on them, or were willing to act on them in public. They were heavily closeted. The punishments for being gay were pretty harsh. They were closeted. Being gay was illegal in a lot of places. The same thing is happening with trans and non-binary people now. They've always existed. They were friends and roommates, as well as fond companions. Historically, homosexuality was looked at as more of a vice rather than an identity. Something on the level of being an alcoholic or cheating on your wife. So there weren't really out and proud gay people, if that makes sense. In the upper classes, which is where most our history books focus on, marriages were arranged. It was pretty common for couples to stop sleeping with each other after 10-15 years, and it wasn't socially acceptable to talk about their extramarital affairs publicly. When these types of relationships happened, people just pretended not to know what was going on. There are some famous historical figures that are known assumed to be gay. British monarchs, King James of the King James Bible, Richard the Lionheart, and Anne I were all suspected to have had same-sex relationships. People are inclined to highball the estimate as it fits their understanding. But the actual answer is that it's impossible to tell since it wasn't widely reported on prior to legalization. Could have been the same, could have been less, could have been more. We just don't know, and until we fully understand the mechanisms of sexuality, it is impossible to make a projection with any reliability or accuracy. Repressed, closeted. Being gay could lose you your family, your job, and/or your life less than 40 years ago. Even today in some places. Depends on how far back we're talking about. The ancient Greeks were all about the guy-on-guy sex. In the 18th century, sodomy was often punishable with the death penalty. Criminal prosecutions for sodomy or simply soliciting gay sex continued well into the middle of the 20th century in most Western countries. It has been quite a short amount of time since homosexual acts have been entirely legal, without even talking about the social stigma. The ancient Romans and Spartans had a lot of gay people. It was actually encouraged within armies, with the idea you would be more willing to die for your lover than just a colleague. Then some bigots wrote some books and claimed it was the word of God, and people still believe them to this day. You know, when I was in school, we were taught that only about 10 of people are strictly heterosexual, 10 are strictly homosexual, and the rest are somewhere in between on the sliding scale and might present bisexual behavior based on the situation. People involved or might present no sexual behavior at all, asexuals. But when we add social pressure component to it, about 90 of people will behave heterosexual, because it's still considered the norm you won't face persecution for. In the 18th century, sodomy was often punishable with the death penalty. Criminal prosecutions for sodomy or simply soliciting gay sex continued well into the middle of the 20th century in most Western countries. It has been quite a short amount of time since homosexual acts have been entirely legal, without even talking about the social stigma.